Good evening, everyone. My name's Amanda Sherman. I'm the mental health lead here at the DSBN. Welcome. I'm going to begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous peoples. So, on behalf of the DSBN and the Parent Involvement Committee, I'd like to welcome you to the first event in our PIC speaker series this school year. We have many exciting speakers lined up, and tonight I am very pleased to introduce Dr. Jean Clinton. Dr. Clinton is world-renowned as an advocate for children's issues. She's clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Neurosciences at McMaster in the Division of Child Psychiatry. She is cross-appointed in pediatrics and family medicine, and an associate in the Department of Child Psychiatry at the Hospital for Sick Children. She's a fellow of the Child Trauma Academy, as well as a 0 to 3 Academy Fellow since 2013. She's been a consultant to children and youth mental health programs, child welfare, and primary care for over 30 years. Dr. Clinton was appointed as an education advisor to the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Education from 2014 to 2018. And her special interest lies in brain development and the crucial role relationships and connectedness play. Dr. Clinton champions the development of a national comprehensive child well-being strategy, including a system of early learning and care for all young children and their families. She is equally committed to ensuring that children and youth's needs and voices are heard and respected. And Dr. Clinton has also authored her first book, Love Builds Brains, and I believe that the first 100 registrants tonight received a copy of that book. So I hope that you enjoy reading it. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Jean Clinton. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Clinton.
Oh, well, Amanda, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm thrilled to be back in Niagara, very close to my heart and very close to where I live here in Hamilton. I'm going to spend about the next hour talking to you about resilience, about the brain, about the impact of stress on the developing brain, but more importantly, I hope planting some seeds about what we can do as parents. I'm a mum of 5 great kids, and I'm so privileged to have 7 grandchildren, 4 of them COVID babies, and really to spend some time thinking about how can we help our littlest ones, our children under 18, manage in these challenging times. So here's a spoiler alert. One of the things that I'm going to talk to you about is the fact that we as the adults in children's lives really are going to need to look after ourselves. That if we can help ourselves be on the list of things that we need to attend to, then we're going to help our children very, very significantly. So let me call up my my slide deck, and I'll hope that it works here. There's always the wondrous challenges of technology. It's our friend in so many ways, but also it kind of causes a little bit of anxiety, as we'll talk about. So hopefully now you're seeing the slides, and I'm going to be talking about rising to resilience. And it's really all about how can we assist our children and young people through these challenging times. I've given you the spoiler alert that a very big part of it has to do with how are we going to look after ourselves so that we can look after others. But you know, when I think about what we've gone through in the past 21 months, one of the things that I want to make sure of, you know, I'm a child psychiatrist, as you've heard, working with families for a very long time. And what I know is that we have gone collectively through very, very challenging times. That, you know, some of us feel that we're reaching finally to the top of that cliff, that arduous climb up. Many of us feel, though, that we're hanging on. You look at that other hand, that we're hanging on by our fingernails, like, no more, no more, I've had enough. So I want to say a huge thank you for turning up tonight, for being interested in learning how can we rise to resilience? How can we absolutely make sure that we're thinking about how our children and ourselves can make it through these what are called VUCA times. They are volatile, they're uncertain, we have complex situations that we're having to deal with, and they're ambiguous. So let me first tell you something, that this is not going to be a clinical talk about how to manage your child's anxiety, even though I am a child psychiatrist. I'm spending so much of my time following the advice of a dear mentor, the late Dr. Paul Steinauer. And he said to me many years ago, Jean, we really need to stop thinking just about being in the middle of this gushing river, catching one or two kids as they rush by, doing the best that we can. We need to be upstream, trying to figure out, why are children falling in the river in the first place? It's like this second picture. The analogy is of so many of us in mental health care feel that we're down at the bottom of a cliff catching kids after they've fallen off. And we're saying, what the heck? What can we do upstream? What can we do at the top of the cliff so that the kids aren't falling over in the first place? Well, let me tell you, I have a very firm belief, not just made up, but from international literature and from years of being a child of educators and a sibling of educators. My family are all in the education business. In fact, my dad came to Canada in 1965. He was interviewed in Scotland to come for a job with the Hamilton Catholic Board and remained here. That's how his full career unfolded. And what I know is that public education, when we do it right and we do it well, is an immunization. It is an upstream activity that prevents mental health and problems later on. So, you know, one of the things I've had to really, really tussle with, and I want to share with you, is what do we have as our North Star belief? You know, you guys are part of the education world, and you know that in education, there have been these great big swings of here, we're going to do this things this way, you know, is it a whole word? You know, in the reading, you know, remember the reading dilemma, is it a whole word or is it phonics? And then a huge big swing over, should we focus on social and emotional learning or should we be focusing on restorative practices? And there's been a huge big swing in education for many years, as I've seen with my 5 kids in the public education system predominantly. And so I often wonder, how can we infuse a North Star belief? And what I've discovered through my education, my learning from the elders in First Nations communities, that they have a North Star belief. They have many. But one of them that I want to share with you is that children in their community are seen as the sacred ones. They are the precious, precious gifts from the Creator. And so that means when you're making decisions, as I hope our government made today, they're thinking about what is going to happen with the decisions I make today, because they are going to influence the next 7 generations. So the wisdom of the elder says, how are we processing and filtering all of our decisions through the lens of what impact is it going to have on children? So the decision I haven't seen today, I know that the federal government and the province of Ontario were having conversations about the childcare. And, you know, the idea of thinking about what families need, what children need at the central core, not what we need in terms of defense and roads and all those other things, which are important. But the North Star belief has to be our children should be the driving force of the decisions that we make. So what does that mean in terms of education? So here I'm going to be a little bit provocative. You guys are all parents like me. You have been involved in the Parent Involvement Committee, so you're dedicated to what your children and your schools and how you can support them, what they need. And I'm going to kind of provoke some of you, not all of you, because many of you are already on this page. And so I have been observing education for many, many years as a child psychiatrist. And you know what I've observed is that for a very, very long time, we've had a view of education that has said, we know what kids need to know. We are going to fill them up. They're a blank slate, and we're going to fill them up with what we know they need to know. So we have a curriculum that says X, Y, and Z, you know, these overall expectations need to be met, and these are the specifics within it. And so we've had an education system for a very long time that really has thought about filling the bucket of children's empty minds. But, you know, many of us and many scholars, much bigger thinkers than me across the universe, across the world, the globe, have said, you know what, we need to shift the moral imperative of education and think that it's more about igniting the flame of learning rather than just filling the bucket. Now, I've coined the term that filling the bucket is kind of like stuffing the duck. You know, when you want a duck or a goose to get ready for Thanksgiving or Christmas, you force feed them so that we've got lovely big fat, anyway, enough detail. But you know what I mean. So I talk about stuffing the duck. But what we now know is that the moral imperative of education needs to be much more, not just about filling that bucket with academics, but really, truly thinking about the double thing, the double importance that is educational's role. And that is not just about deep learning or academic achievement, but it's also about well-being. And well-being's not about, you know, okay, on Wednesday afternoons at 2, we bring in some social and emotional, you know, zones of regulation, or we do this or we do that. But it is baked into all of the interactions that happen for the young people, the children, and all of the educators and support staff in the school. And the part that I've introduced into this framework is that relationships, the connection, our social brain is what combines that well-being and deep learning or academic achievement. And so here's a provocation for you as parents. As education is moving towards education of the whole child, of thinking about being good at learning, but also good at life, do we need to be reframing what parent involvement means? So many of you, like myself, were very involved in the parent associations at school and, you know, thinking about fundraising, how can we support the school? But what have we learned from COVID? We've learned that we as parents play a much, much larger role, a much, much larger role than fundraising. We as parents are part of a triad of the child, the community, the school, and the parent, that triangle. We need to really be reframing. Is our role? What is our role? How do we contribute? Because, you know, the academic research and thinking about John Hattie is that the most power in terms of parent involvement isn't necessarily about how much you fundraise and bring into the school, but how are you creating a culture of learning at home? How are you yourself manifesting and showing that education and lifelong learning is important. So why am I so hung up on these kind of things? Well, there's a couple of things. One, as I said, I'm upstreamist, but the other, when I've examined the research literature about when we talk about well-being and education, what are we talking about? There's no one definition that people can all land on. And, you know, as we think about COVID-19 and building resilience, we have to be telling ourselves and knowing and partnering with schools and community to say that we want our kids to be well, not just educated well, but living well. And that means that living well is not just about not being sick. Living well, according to the World Health Organization, really is about helping us and helping our kids realize their own potential. Now, if we've been so busy stuffing the duck, then we've never helped kids learn their own potential. Sure, they've learned how to be smart in terms of answering the questions. But what we've seen is that how we're supporting children through COVID-19, we're seeing that, man, oh man, they're having lots of trouble coping with the stress of COVID-19. So we need to be upping our game. We need to be saying, in order for kids to thrive during these challenging times, we need to really deeply rethink what it is that we're doing as parents and as educators, because well-being is being able to reach your potential, be able to cope, work productively and fruitfully, but also the kids that we see who are doing well are the ones who are saying, how can I help my community? How can I help others who aren't doing so well? And in fact, my friend Josh Fullen from Maximum City has done a number of surveys of kids through COVID and has found that, in fact, in about 30% of kids, there's been an increase in empathy. About 25% of kids are showing increased citizenship, reaching out to others. And what he's able to do in his research is make a connection between kids who are involved in that and their sense of well-being. So I love the First Nations mental wellness framework. I lean on it all of the time because what they talk about, we need to bring back into our laser focus, because we have lost sight of the fact that well-being comes from a balance between our spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental health. So again, from Josh Fullen in Maximum City, what we've seen in COVID-19 is the amount of outside play, the amount of physical activity has absolutely plummeted in COVID-19. But the kids who reported that they kept on with the amount of play and outside activity and increased it, their sense of well-being has increased, their sense of purpose, their sense of having hope, a sense of belonging and meaning in daily life has increased. So what's the message to us as parents and grandparents? Get the kids outside. Now, hang on a second. For those of you in the audience who have been able to hold on by your fingernails and have let your kids onto screens, and you've been using screens just so you can get through the frickin' day, do not beat yourself up. Absolutely, you have done the best that you can given the conditions that we've had. You have been a teacher, an educator, you've been educating at home, you've been balancing the budget, you've been trying not to fight with your partner, all of these stresses. So do not beat yourself up if they've had more screen time. But now, let's grab on to the fact that the kids who have done best through these times have been outside. They haven't been stuck in the house playing Halo or Grand Theft Auto. They've been out there playing, connecting, having more independence, yes, but also having a sense of belonging and meaning. So I want to speak to you as parents first before we get into some of the challenges with the kids. And so this is the work of a fabulous researcher, Dr. Richie Davidson. And so just picture yourself in this situation and just wait a minute, because this is the bad news. The good news is coming in a second. But what Richie Davidson, he's an affective neuroscientist, so he has done some of the most amazing work examining the meditative practices of Tibetan monks and shown the health benefits of mindfulness and meditation. But, you know, he was involved, or he reports a big study where a whole slew of American adults had a little app that they carried about, and they got a ping. And when they got the ping, they had to say, "Where is your mind right now?" And what they found was that 47% of the time, the adult's mind was wandering. Not wandering and creative, wonderful generating of new ideas, but just blank, nothing going on. And what they discovered is the more people had this blank mind wandering, the less well they felt. The less well they felt. And so what Richie Davidson says is, where's the good news? We can do something about this. But think about, you know, I read this list of the challenges to a healthy mind, and I say, yeah, man, I get it. Distractibility, oh my gosh, you know, I can hardly read a full scientific article anymore. What's with that? You know, I'm reading it and I get distracted. I think, oh, well, there might be something on my email that I need to look after. What are you talking about? Focus your attention. I've been sucking at that big time. The other thing that really affects healthy minds is loneliness, this lack of connection. And what we have seen and you've experienced with your adolescence, and that adolescence, by the way, goes from about 9 or 10 years of age on to 28 years of age under construction. But what we've seen is their social isolation has really, this loneliness has really affected their ability to focus, to concentrate, to have that sense of well-being. There's also huge increases, and I'll show you from the Ontario Parent Survey, huge increases in depression and anxiety and negative self-talk. All of these are challenges to a healthy mind, and then having a loss of meaning and purpose in your life. So here's the great news. The great news is you can change your mind. You absolutely, with some of the practices that I'm going to talk about, you can literally change your brain to change your mind. So how do you do that? I'll talk more in detail as I'm talking about resilience. But here are 4 pillars of a healthy mind, and feel free to take screenshots as you like here. These are materials I've taken from Dr. Davidson and taken pictures. And so one of them is having awareness, having body awareness. Where am I feeling tension right now? So I always feel tension in my neck. Oh, and every time I look at this picture, I think of, oh, okay, how's my neck doing right now? So having awareness of your body, having awareness of your breath. You can do this in 30 seconds and you get better. 30 seconds to a healthier mind, or 3 minutes to a healthier mind, or 30 minutes to a healthier mind. I'll show you a resource that you can dig into. What else is a pillar of a healthy mind? So I told you about loneliness, connection. So what can you do to help your kids who are feeling socially isolated? You can help them recognize their breathing and be present in the moment. You can figure out with them, well, you can't see your friends right now, but how can you reach out through a tweet or whatever the kids are using these days, who can keep up, so that you feel absolutely connected. We've got this pandemic going on, but there's a second one. And that is that kids are feeling that they're watching this bloody social media and they see all of the good stuff that's happening in people's life, none of the dresh that's hard. And so they feel that they can't connect with people. Well, we need to help them make the decision. I'm going to have a social media free day every Friday or every second Friday. And I'm going to reach out and call somebody or text them and follow up with a real conversation with them. So connection changes your brain. Then there's insight, and that's all about figuring out what am I thinking about my thinking. And then the last one is having purpose in life. So a huge part of my purpose in life is to make a difference. I spend so much of my time now reaching out to parents and educators and judges to try and understand what it is that kids need in order to lead a life of thriving. But here, guys, I'm going to tell you, you have been bitten up. As this one says, parents are shredded by the pandemic. If you're feeling overwhelmed, not understood, exhausted, I want to give you permission to sit in that feeling right now, because you are not alone. And when we recognize that we are not alone, we're much better able to say, oh, it's not just me going through this. So how can I reach out to others? Make that connection. How can I think about my thinking? And I'll give you some strategies for this. How can I think about my thinking and say, well, is my thinking helping me or making me sick? We can help our kids with the same thing. Say, how am I making connections? What am I thinking about? What am I focusing on? Am I anxious about things I have no control over? And can I now control the things that I can? But here's some of the data I wanted to share with you. It's a bit scary, so I'm sorry about that. This is a low point of the talk, as my friend Steve de Groot talks about. But what we know from almost 11,000 parents across Ontario, a study done by the Offord Centre and McMaster University, is that parents are really suffering. So when we look at that middle number, and that's the one that screamed out to me, 69% of parents reported significant depressive symptoms in May, June, and July of this year. It was about 50% before, and it's gone up through this. A third of parents have said that they are seeking professional help. They've gained weight, people are drinking more, people have been worried about food. And then when it comes to what's the concern that you have about your kids, they're very, very real. 53% have had significant concerns about trying to modulate and figure out this remote learning. 61% have had trouble managing screen time, as I talked about. Learning and education, 63% managing their own time. But the things that they have had most effect on, 44% managing their children's anxiety and stress. 74% are saying, I need connection. I'm not seeing my friends nearly enough. They're finding their kids are being affected by not seeing their friends nearly enough, going to school in person and having to stay home. So why do I want to share these findings with you? And why, as a child psychiatrist and a bit of a brain geek, to tell you the truth, why is this so important? Well, to me, what we now know is that these experiences that you are going through as adults and the kids are going through is building their brains. So the good news here is when adults are supported and able to be supportive of their children, they can do really, really well. They can get out, they can play, they can volunteer, they can do all kinds of things. So this is all about buffering stress. But from the brain perspective, what we now know is that the brain is built not by your genes, but by how your genes are affected by the environment and the experiences that you have. So our brain, we used to think, was kind of a fixed machine. Your genes determined how smart you were going to be, just like it did how tall you were going to be. And then studies started to say, oh, you know what? Genes get turned on or silenced by what goes on in the environment. So, for example, in school, and even up till 1981, when I graduated from medical school, we thought something like height was absolutely genetically determined. You're going to be about as tall as your parents are. But then they started doing studies, and they saw that, then they did lots of studies on twins who were raised apart. And so what they found was that twins who were raised apart, when they got together, when they brought them in for the study, at 30, 35 years of age, one twin was 6'2", but the other one was only 5'6". And they went, well, hang on a second. If height is determined by your genes, then they should be about the same height. And then they examined the situation. And they saw that the one who was 6'2" had been adopted into a family who had lots of resources, really looked after them, no challenges. And so the potential for his height, the gene expression, was fully realized. But the other guy had been adopted into a family that had major challenges, major mental health and breakup, and he ended up in foster care. So at crucial times in his development, he did not have the experiences that he needed in terms of nutrition, etc. And so the genes we need to think about are listening to the environment. They're listening to the environment. So when I say that the brain is built by experience, what I'm absolutely saying is that we have got these big brain cells, lots and lots and lots and lots of them, trillions of them, called neurons. And they're what make up our brain. It weighs about 3 pounds. It's as soft as room temperature butter in this very hard skull. So don't shake a baby. Man, oh man, wear a helmet. Yeah. But what they found, what we now know, is that those neurons wire up together. They communicate across all areas of the brain, creating networks based on experiences that come in through the senses. This is going to be really important, coming in through the senses, internally as well as externally. And when we're going to talk about anxiety, we'll see, oh, wow, this is changing the brain. So the brain, the neurons don't talk to each other by connecting, but they send little chemical messengers down here that you see called synapses, and they send neurochemicals across the brain. So what we've learned is that your intelligence, remember I talked about height? Well, what we now know also is that your intelligence, which we used to think was fixed, you're going to be about as smart as your parents are. And I used to joke about, we've got this gene pool, and whenever you've got one child, the oldest is going to be smartest, and then they get dumber as you have more kids. Not true. But we had this kind of vision that your intelligence was also determined by your genes. Not true. Learning new things changes those neurons. Those little blobby bits there are neurons. And when you learn something, look at all of that new interconnectivity there. So play and learning literally sculpts the brain. So let's think about COVID and the importance of you in buffering the stress that kids are going to be experiencing, because that's how the brain develops. So just a little more on the brain here. When we think about the brain, this is a picture of the brain kind of sliced in half, and then imagine it is turned into a triangle. We have a hierarchical development of the brain. That means that simple stuff gets built first, and then connections happen into much more complex things. And what we know now is that when you've got the simple stuff coming in, you need it to process through those parts of the brain. It needs to be worked out and made connections and not get stuck there in order to open up the brain to be eventually able to reason. So, what does that mean? Let's think practically. I just had my little 3-month-old granddaughter here this afternoon, and she was a bit fussy. And so I cannot possibly talk her out of being fussy. She doesn't have that top part of the brain, that reason part of the brain yet. But I need to find out ways that I can regulate her. So I'm bouncing her and singing to her, my little girl. And then I look at her and she sees my face and she learns that here's Nana and I'm going to smile. So that social connection helped her regulate. What does this mean? It means that the brain processes from the bottom to the top. We need to be thinking not about yakking away our kids, blah, 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 blah. Don't feel that way. It's not that way. Try something different. We need, first of all, to be helping them regulate, to say, how does that feel? I'm sorry you're feeling this. We need to use our relationship, our connection with kids, in order to build their resilience. Our relationship, because the brain is a social organ wired to connect. The whole matrix, the primary environment, is social relationships. So what does it mean? What do we know? In times of stress, reach out to somebody else. When your kids are feeling stressed, help them reach out. You've seen this yourself. I remember when we went on a absolutely disastrous summer holiday on a houseboat, so 5 kids, Jim and I, my husband and my 13-year-old daughter was miserable the whole time. All she wanted to do was be with her friends. It was before cell phones, but if we'd had cell phones, I sure as heck would have been able to let her text her friends, call her friends, be with her friends. Connection is absolutely key. And, people are really worried about, well, what about during COVID-19? And I do a lot of work with early years, and I love this quote, and I found this picture. So this is a quote that says, we can connect through masks. On a day I was exceptionally concerned about my efficacy as an educator while wearing a mask, a 3-year-old said, I love you because you are so special. Love makes joy come out your eyes, and I can feel it in my heart. You can still build relationships while you're wearing a mask. So it makes me want to share with you the research that says that when we spend our time focusing on how am I connecting with my kids, how am I making them feel felt by me, that they feel safe, that they feel significant, a sense of belonging and connecting at home, that they feel situated, that they have a purpose and a goal that I'm helping them with. How much time as parents are we spending connecting with our kids? And then how much time are we spending directing and correcting them? So, oh my gosh, as I'm learning all this research and my kids are getting bigger, I'm going, oh my God, I feel so guilty. I was a great party pooper of their life. You have to organize life. 5 kids, you have to be organized. But did I spend enough time connecting? Or was I spending so much time directing? And so here's the golden nugget. As we think about building resilience in our kids, we need to be prioritizing relationship, relationship, relationship. And the work of Dr. John Gottman from the Gottman Institute, he works with couples, but it applies so well for our kids, is that we need to be thinking about filling the emotional bank account, or piggy bank, as I've put in here. So what does that mean? It means telling your kids when they wake up in the morning, even if they're rushing and they're not getting up when you want them, that you are communicating to them, even though that you may be ticked off with them, that you love them to bits. I have a dream that every child will have at least one adult whose eyes light up when they enter the room. So you layer all those deposits into that piggy bank. Why? 1, because it's the right thing to do, but 2, we're parents. We're going to have times when we have to withdraw from that piggy bank. Now, if the account is empty, then and you have to make a withdrawal, then you're in tough straits. But if you have deposited all of the time into that piggy bank, you've got lots to withdraw on. Now, you might think, okay, this is good for little kids, but what about adolescents? Well, what do we know about the adolescent brain is it's just as important. Is it different in the ways that you have to do it? Yeah, absolutely, for sure. For sure it's different. But what we now know about adolescents is they are worrying about us as their parents. They're not saying, oh, forget the parents. And I hate the commercials that showed, the kids giving the skulls to the parents. I actually called the CRTC about one of them, the Staples commercial. Adolescents absolutely are pulled in to be with their peers. But just because they're attaching to their peers does not mean that they have to detach or have no relationship with us. In fact, what the evidence shows is that when you have positive connection to adults in your life as an adolescent, then you are much better able to thrive and deal with the bangs and the arrows and all of the other bad stuff that happens. But let me talk about a great interferer. And right now, what many of us are experiencing has to do with the stress of uncertainty. The stress of uncertainty makes your brain yield back into, that upside down triangle again. So the base is regulate, and that is your emotional brain in the middle. And when your emotional brain is in charge, firing, like fight or flight, then your rational, planning, organizing brain goes offline. And so what's one of the big kickers for this? So uncertainty for sure, but also the brain on stress. Now, there's some things to know about stress. First of all, not all stress is the same. And when I'm talking about stress, what I'm describing is what the scientists talk about as your body system perceiving an alteration, something different's going on here. I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry. All of those are stressors. I'm preparing for a talk. My computer was freezing all day today, and I have no idea why it's still working tonight. Thank you very much. Your body responds to a stress by turning on pathways that I'll show you about. But stress gets a bad rap. But in fact, there's we need positive stress. We need, and those of you who heard Dr. Michael Unger speak last year, know about the huge importance of experiencing some stress, like exams or being dropped off for your first date or other things. It increases your stress hormones, but it also teaches you that I can manage this. So we have to stop bubble wrapping our kids and have them actually experiencing stress so that they learn, I can do this. The next stressor type, though, is tolerable stress, where it's more complicated, it's more scary, like a death of a loved one or a natural tragedy. Many of the kids in BC will be going through this right now. But when you've got buffering by adults around you, then you're not as likely to have the bombardment of all the stress hormones, and you're able to recover. The stress we really, really worry about is called toxic stress. And that's when there's no adult buffering, the stress system is activated, and it actually can change your lifelong. So a normal stress response is you go from a calm state, in comes a stressor. Deep inside your brain, your amygdala releases adrenaline so that you can run and fight, and cortisol so that you can keep running, get glucose going and mobilize the site, all of the things that need to prevent you from bleeding out, and your immune responses. That comes in. Your hippocampus is new learning and memory, and it says, oh, it's okay, there used to be a bear here, right? You saw it, but now it's gone. Your prefrontal cortex says, oh, it's okay, Jean, that's not a snake, it's a cord. The threat gets removed. You get into a calm state. But what we're finding in COVID-19 is that kids and adults are experiencing this threat going on all of the time. So what becomes hugely important is that we shift the pattern of our stress. There are things, the good news is, there are things that we can absolutely do. We are bombarded with this stressor, but we can focus our attention in different ways so that we make that those stressors more predictable, more moderate and controllable. How do you do that? Well, there's a wonderful article called The Pandemic Toolkit That Parents Need. And there are 8 strategies that are based on how the brain works that you can, again, take a picture of this, that you can look up the Psychology Today article. So what are 8 things that you can do starting tonight to make those stressors more predictable for you and your family? 1, maintain daily routines. Even though we've been so disrupted about schools open, schools closed, hybrid model, virtual model, whatever it is, maintain structure so the kids and you get up at the same time, no matter what. You sleep in on the weekend if you're lucky enough. If your kids can, let them sleep in, but you have a ritual, routines, and a healthy lifestyle. The next thing is look out for your sleep. Sleep's not just about getting rest. Sleep is also about reparative stuff that happens while you're asleep. Physical activity, number 3. Physical activity creates the release of miracle-grow for the brain, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It releases that, and that helps with new synapses growing and generating. So get outside. We know this is crucial now with the research that we're seeing on how sedentary parents and kids are. The next one is find your calm. So I've been a shrink for almost 35, I don't know, is it 35 or more years now? And I'm amazed at how many people don't know where their happy place is. So tonight, here's a project. Figure out, think about, where is my happy place? Where is the place that I have downtime, where I can relax and just be calm? The next is have family meals. The next is look at reaching out and helping others. You know, I talked about connectedness as one of the patterns of a healthy mind. Well, helping others. We were not meant to walk this world alone. We are a social species. Makes a big, big difference. Reach out to your neighbors. Reach out to others. The next one is so hard but so important, and that is to limit your time on media and devices. And then the last one to think about here, and again, take a screenshot of this, is always remember your focus determines your reality. So are you thinking about the things you can control or the things that you can't control? So then, as we start to apply all of this to what our kids and we are going through, let's just talk a little bit about what is anxiety. So number 1, anxiety is good for us. Some anxiety is good for us. We all experience it at some time. Little ones have different kinds of anxieties than older ones. The brain, the human brain is different from other species in that we can create by our thinking anxiety situations, and we can get triggered by things that come from inside our body. Oh, I have a pain there. What does that mean? Am I having a heart attack? And outside, oh, he looked at me weird. Does that mean that I said the wrong thing? Am I going to be rejected by the group? So it comes from inside and outside. So what normal anxiety is, you've got a situation or a trigger, first date, prepare an exam, concert. You've got a sense of apprehension, of nervousness and tension and edginess, but normal anxiety is transient. It goes away. Remember I talked about the amygdala and the hippocampus? It's transient. The things get turned off. It goes away and it doesn't interfere. So lots of data to share with you. About 6 to 20% of children suffer from an anxiety disorder, but the majority of kids don't have a disorder, and a disorder is when it actually interferes with your ability to function. So, 40% of grade school kids, and this is outside of COVID, have fears about separating from a parent, or have fears that bother them, that go through their mind. They worry about, am I going to be good enough? And they need support. And girls experience it more than others. When we worry is when the child is afraid of something that, you really shouldn't be afraid of. There's nothing scary about it from what's typical for others. When the degree of stress is higher than you would expect, or given other children's response to it. How does it interfere? Number 3 is, how does it interfere? Does it make them not able to make friends? Does it mean that they're failing or avoiding class? Is it creating conflicts in the family because you can't go to family functions? And then how are they able to recover from it? So here we've got a very abnormal situation with COVID. But the thing is, many kids are experiencing not anxiety disorders. There's just been a big study done, 2014, a repeat of a study from 1984. And what we know is the number of kids with anxiety disorder that I was just describing has not gone up. But the percentage of kids who are experiencing an increase in their psychological distress has really gone up. So what can you do about it as parents? What can we do about it as parents? So these all make just so much sense. And again, take a screenshot and we'll talk about it more in the question. So be patient, calm, and reassuring. I don't know how many times parents have told me they've told their kids, don't worry. Well, I'll tell you one thing that's going to make kids worry more is telling them not to worry. So be patient, calm, and reassuring. Tell them that, you know what, no matter how big a problem, we as a family together are going to be able to solve it. Let's do it in small steps. So kids who have kind of panic about going to the mall or returning back to school, do it in small steps. First of all, drive near the school. Second, drive near the school and step out of the car with the mask on. So small steps. Reward and praise your child's efforts when they do things, and be a model. Here's a big one. Be a model by managing your own anxiety. Help them to avoid avoidance. Teach your child positive self-talk. Also, and we'll talk a bit more about this again in a few minutes, teach your child these basic relaxation strategies such as belly breathing and muscle relaxation. I'm going to show you a slide from a wonderful School Mental Health Ontario that Dr. Sherman is part of. Keep the stress low at home. Deal with external situations that you can go in and do something about, like bullying. Make sure that that set of 8 things that I talked about, you're focusing on at home. But what you please don't do is criticize or yell at your child. There's nothing to be scared about. What are you going on about? It's not such a big deal. Why are you such a freaking drama queen? Not going to help. Don't tease or make fun of your child for their anxiety. Some of this makes so much sense. But, we know that it's not the case for all parents that it makes this much sense. Don't ignore the problem or tell them to toughen up or pressure the child or have unrealistic expectations. So here are some questions that you can ask. What do you need right now? And again, take a picture of this. What do you need right now? What's most important to you? What are you hoping for? Tell me something that's going well. And what's helped you the most today? So these are all so very important. And our mindset and thinking about how we are going to help our kids makes such a big, big difference. Our mindset, what we think, affects how we feel, affects how we act. So a key message here is put your own mask on first. You are going to be better able to help your child if you put your own mask on first, if you have a mindset that says, me lending my child my calm is going to help them so dramatically. My building my resilience and my resilience skills is going to help my child so dramatically. So that means figure out, where's your calm spot? Where's your happy place? So that you can, what we call, co-regulate them. You can use you as a regulated adult, you know, down at that bottom there, a regulated adult, to lend them your calm. So what are some of the things that you can do and you can help your kids do? This is from this great website, School Mental Health Ontario, Dr. Sherman's work. So find your calm place. Where do you feel the most relaxed? Do an exercise of tense up your muscles and then, oh man, that feels so good. Relax and say, oh, I didn't even know I was so tense. Just breathe. Have a moment for gratitude. Just notice 5 things that you see, 4 that you hear, 3 that you feel and touch, 2 that you smell, and 1 that you taste. Just stop and listen to the birds, to the traffic, to the waterfall. Here's one I love. This radical acceptance therapy is just frickin' let it go, you know? Let it go. I'm not going to start now. You're all going to have that movie theme from Frozen in your head. And then 4-finger affirmations. I am loved today. I believe in me. So great resource. Why is this so important? Well, it has to do with resilience. And in these last few minutes, I'm going to talk about resilience again, more directly and specifically. I've mentioned it and thought about it and talked about it all through the slides. But what we know about protective factors for children, numero uno, number 1, top protective factor for children is you and how you turn up for them. So supportive adult-child relationships, so crucially important. A sense of self-efficacy and perceived control. So the kids who are helping their neighbors through this COVID time, who are given some ability to take some charge of their learning, are doing far better. Having adaptive skills and self-regulatory capacities, being able to be the boss of their emotion, their thinking, their feelings, their behaviors makes a difference. And here, sources of faith, hope, and cultural traditions. So I want to share with you now, there's a video here that I want to share with you that talks about the power and what resilience is all about. So this is the brain's journey to resilience. It's free. You can download it yourself.
Brains. They are everywhere. In the world's gentlest places and its harshest. In this unforgiving environment, some brains exhibit troubling signs. Addiction, illness, depression, social disorder. Yet others thrive. Why have some brains developed the ability to cope in harsh conditions while others struggle? It is one of nature's great secrets.
Hi. Hello? This is amazing. But I just need to clarify a few things. This great secret? It's actually science. Severe adversity isn't good for any brain. But it is true that some brains do better than others in the face of significant challenges.
Oh, a scientist. Yes, I agree. This is the great secret of science.
Great, yes, but not a secret. Let me explain. We're born with brains, but our brains change as we grow. They develop based on experiences we have, and different brains respond to experiences in different ways. Okay, thanks. I'll let you get back to it.
Indeed. Some brains show robustity and strongitude, while others...
Sorry, we scientists use the word resilience. Some brains are more resilient than others.
Yes, resiliences.
Resilience?
Resilience. Revenge of the Four-Kings.
Resilience is a result of the interplay between genes and life experiences. It's a brain's ability to maintain good functioning under adversity.
Resilience makes us invincible.
Nothing makes us invincible. What resilience does is to give less leverage to negative factors in our lives and tip the balance in favor of positive outcomes.
Resilience. Fate's legendary prize.
Whoa, no! Some people are born with more resilience than others, but resilience can also be built over time. It's a big project involving parents, caregivers, teachers,
Kith, kin, karaoke comrades,
soccer coaches, counselors,
pastry chefs, associate producers, even millennials, like the barn raising in towns of old.
Yeah. In fact, we scientists believe strong brain architecture is the foundation for resilience. And, oh, look over there.
Oh, yes. A young brain returns after months of isolation and adversity. No words can describe what this poor brain has suffered.
There are words that describe it. We scientists call it toxic stress.
Toxic stress lies in words.
No, that's not. No. Stress happens inside the body. It's the fight or flight system kicking in. But if stress hormones are elevated too high and for too long, it can have negative effects on the brain and body.
Stress, a nasty poison.
Not all stress, just toxic stress. With the right supports, we can make severe stress tolerable, which means it won't do lasting damage. Stress can even be positive because it helps us to learn problem solving and coping skills, which leads us back to resilience.
Alas, this brain is resilience-less.
No, it isn't. Let me explain. Remember when I talked about giving less leverage to negative experiences and tipping the scale in a positive direction? Well, here's a little something I've been working on. It's a really amazing metaphor. Here it goes. I call it the resilience scale.
Resilience scales. Protective armor plates.
That's shiny. But no. The resilience scale helps us understand why some brains are more resilient than others.
The resilience scale sends out invisible resilience rays
It's really just a scale. See? It's a beam being held up by a fulcrum.
full of crumbs.
Geez, no! A fulcrum. You know, like high school phys... Never mind. Let me just clean this up. See, negative experiences add weight to one end of the beam, and positive factors add weight to the other end. Ideally, we want the scale to tip toward the positive side and lead toward positive life outcomes.
The brain's future literally hangs in the balance.
The position of the fulcrum can be understood as our original capacity for resilience. It's something like our genetic starting position. Remember the young brain that was struggling to survive? Look, it started life with the fulcrum off-center, giving more leverage to negative experiences. Serious stuff, like abuse, neglect, and chaotic environments. That means positive factors like responsive relationships, safe environments, and learning opportunities had less leverage. Over time, the negative load shifted the fulcrum even farther in a negative direction.
Tragedy.
Not at all. Right now, this brain is experiencing poor health, but with help, the scale can be tipped toward more positive outcomes. The first thing we can do is to stop negative experiences from stacking up. Then we can add more positive factors, loading up the positive side of the scale. And we're not done. We can work to shift the fulcrum in a way that favors positive outcomes.
The fulcrum, an amazing instant fix-it button.
No, it's a process. It involves many supportive people and plenty of time. Remember? This brain is still young, so adult brains can work with it to relieve toxic stress and teach coping skills. In early childhood, these efforts can push the fulcrum a considerable distance.
Childhood, filled with fascination and fulcrum flexibility.
Sort of, but there are other sensitive
flexibility.
Sort of, but there are other sensitive developmental periods that are windows of opportunity, like adolescence. And even if this brain doesn't get help until adulthood, change is still possible. It will take more support, and the change will be less dramatic. But any fulcrum can be moved to make positive outcomes more achievable.
The bad experiences disappear.
I'm afraid not. It's hard to undo the effects of past negative experiences, and it takes time. But we can eventually relieve the burden of those negative experiences. Our little brain can get the help it needs to adapt, recover, and enjoy good health and wellness.
And everyone, everywhere can become more resilient for eternity.
Why not? With the right support, everyone everywhere can become more resilient.
I'm so glad I saved humanity. It's been a majestic experience.
Yeah, me too. Well done.
Excuse me. So just to finish up, I share that with you. It's from the Alberta Family Wellness Initiative, and it's something that you can take to your parents' groups and share with them and talk about resilience. So I just want to finish up with saying that we really now know that how adults are, who you bring to your relationship with the kids is so important in terms of the buffer. But it also means that you need to be looking after your own health. And what do we know about resilient adults? So here are 3 things that you can think about. And this is the work of Dr. Lucy Hone from New Zealand. And so what she says, what she's learned over her research of many years, is resilient adults, the ones who are able to bounce back in the face of difficulty and be able to access the resources that they need, you know, like friendship, to get through tough times and use that friendship. They've got these 3 characteristics. They recognize that life can be hard. Suffering is a part of life. And they don't waste a single neuron saying, why me? Why me right now? You know, my friend Kathy Lee talks about her grandmother used to say, if you fall in a pile of crapola, are you going to lie in it and wallow, or are you going to get up and brush yourself off? Resilient people get up and say, suffering is part of life. The next is choose carefully where you direct your attention. Take in the good. Are you focusing on the things that you have control over or the things that you can't control? And then the third thing she talks about is to ask yourself, is what I'm doing, my thinking and my action, is it helping me or is it harming me? So, you know, what to keep in mind as we think about all of these things. I've spent all this time talking at you and sharing so many different things is, you know, from Maya Angelou, she says, I've learned people forget what you said and forget what you did, but people, your children, will never forget how you made them feel. So are you finding the opportunities to bring in laughter, to bring in enjoyment and being together? You've had lots of time that you've spent together. Can you laugh about it? And then can you offer an attitude of gratitude to your children? Can you, like I'm doing now, offer them a huge, like you, a huge thank you for turning up, for being here, for listening? What we know about an attitude of gratitude is it changes your brain. It makes you healthier. You can actually cope with many more things if you just in the morning or just in the middle of the day or just at night, here's homework. 3 things. You stop and say, I am so grateful for this in my life at this point in time. I'm so grateful for my family. For many people in the US, I just read a study, friends, family and friends and faith have a huge role to play in their lives. So I'm going to stop here if I can figure out where that is, or maybe Jim can help me, and say thank you, and let's have some opportunities for some questions. So Jim, can you take me off screen, and we can turn over for questions.
Well, I would need somebody to turn their camera on, so I have some content, actually.
Yes, because what I did was yeah, okay, tell me when you've got it.
Oh, okay. So do we have our first questions that we have for Dr. Clinton?
I do. Thank you so much, Dr. Clinton. The first question that we have, due to the flexibility of working from home and virtual schooling during the height of the pandemic, I was able to spend ample time with my daughter, who's now 7. Now that she's back to in-person learning and my career has ramped up again, we are back to a more typical amount of quality time together. I'm having a difficult time communicating to her that having separate spheres is healthy for us. How can I strike the right balance between filling her emotional piggy bank with quality time with me and helping her build independence and self-identity as life moves closer to pre-pandemic norms?
Mm-hmm. Wow, what that's such an important question. And so this the key is to have the dialogue about what is it that you and she can agree upon in terms of the time that you spend together. What is it that she's longing for, and what is it that you're longing for? So she's missing being with you. And so there is the conversation there about what else can you do instead of just being with me? What else are you excited about? What else are you interested in? What else will help you grow? So it's very understandable, but it takes a conversation and not telling her not to feel that way or not be that way, but acknowledge her feelings, number one, help her label what the feelings are, and then help to generate a list of solutions to those, what are other activities that she can do, that she can then come home and be excited about telling you about. Thank you.
If anyone else has any questions, just be sure to put them in the chat, and Mr. Lowe's and I are going to do our best to go through them and rephrase them for Dr. Clinton. So we'll just give it a second. In the meantime, Dr. Clinton, I'm principal of an elementary school here in St. David's in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And just something that we are finding as a staff, that a lot of the students are having trouble with, basically just the things that we typically wouldn't think too much about, but, getting along with each other outside and, conflict with, whose turn it is and just those typical things. Any thoughts about that? And
oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, so first of all, Tracy, it's something that we're seeing all across Canada. So it's not just something that's happening in your school at St. David's. So that's something to know about. And we have to remember that the kids have lost, as it were, 2 years of typical socialization. Mm-hmm. So we need to not lower our expectations, but modify what our view of the child is. And we absolutely have to stop saying, well, why can't you do this? And think about, well, what are the lagging skills? Because behavior is communication. And as they're having trouble on the playground, for example, they may be saying to you, I'm lagging behind in the skills of knowing how to be a friend, how to start a conversation, how to enter into play with others who are busy playing. And so it really means that we need to, across the country, be focusing much more on these social and emotional learning skills, leaving behind, oh, this is how kids used to be, and think, no, there's, they haven't been playing together for 2 years. The thing is, if you give them the freedom and the acceptance that this is lagging skills rather than misbehavior, then they're going to soar. Yeah. If people see it as misbehavior that needs to be punished, that needs to be corrected, then the kids are going to think there's something wrong with me, and they're going to get into that negative self-talk and all of that negative brain. So as a staff, you need to think, man, oh man, they have missed 2 pretty significant years. And how can we help them? How can we create the conditions, give them the skills in order to develop those competencies which you've seen so typically before?
Yes.
So the mindset of the adults makes all of the difference in the world.
Yes, we've found that we've had to do some real explicit teaching around some things that we would maybe typically take for granted.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, there's some good resources. The Making Friends workbook and other things that I can send along to the organizers. A couple of really good resources for kids about making friends. Many speech and language pathologists have done this for many years with children on the spectrum, and now people are using those children's friendship skills for kids who have been at home without the experience of being with others.
Awesome. Okay, Mr. Lowe's, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Clinton, and thank you, Tracy. I have a question here from one of our attendees. My teenager had problems making friends before the pandemic because she is very shy. How can I encourage her to reach out and boost her self-confidence? I really think being home at age 13 for the whole year, it's like she lost a year of development of being a friend. I really want to help, but not sure how to do so.
Right. Yeah. So it's a very similar situation to what Tracy was saying, just for a slightly older child. And so the whole idea is, one, not to push the child, not to say there's, so what do I mean by not to push the child? That you follow the child's lead. So many children that I've worked with over the years have been more shy, more introverted, and were quite content to only have one really good friend. But their parents were extroverted, and they wanted lots of different people in their children's lives. So one is to know your child, spend time trying to see what their temperament is. And there's a wonderful book called Raising Your Spirited Child that you can Google and see. And also Please Understand Me is another one about temperament, that kids come out in a certain way. So shy can be introversion as well, can be, not necessarily, but can be, and they may not have the drive and the desire to have as many friends, maybe just one. And then the thing to do then is to help her figure out what are her things that she's interested in, and find like-minded children. Find other kids who have similar interests. Reach out to the other parents and see what is it that you're, on Facebook or whatever you've got, my little one is really interested in X, Y, and Z just now. Is anybody else interested in that? Can we see if the kids can talk over line? Slow, steady, small steps is the way to go through and build progress. If that makes sense.
Awesome. So our next question is, connecting with peers and friendship is so important to teenagers, and she brackets 15 years old. What should a parent do when we think that some friend groups are negative and causing stress and anxiety for our child? Always second guessing herself, worried not fit in, doesn't want to be different, etc.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Of the families in the audience who have teenagers, raise your hand if this is a worry that you've had. It's so common. We worry so much about the friends that our children have. And it is exemplified these days, or for our children, young people these days, because of social media, because of the picture that's coming across all of the time about how other people's lives are. And so what is really important, I think, is to have, again, the relationship, the sitting down and being with the kids and saying, what is it that you value in a friend? What is it that you bring to a friendship? So one, to help them know themselves. And then secondly, to help them feel that they are able to say no. You know, oftentimes they're worried that if I don't go along with it, or if I don't answer, or if I don't do this, then I'm going to be rejected by the group. And so how can you work and help them with their resistance skills, as it were? That's also helpful. Now, I'm a bit worried because my computer has been problematic today and it's now flickering a bit. I don't know if you're seeing that at your end as well.
No.
No,
Not
yes,
at all.
but it's flickering. So I'm just a little bit afraid if we get cut off. So just to let you know, heads up. If I disappear, it's not anything you've said or asked. It's that. Oh, yeah. I hope it is okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Dr. Clinton. I've got the next question here.
Mm-hmm.
Can you recommend constructive ways for parents to work through their own mental health challenges as a result of the pandemic in ways that won't distress our children? I want to arm my child with emotional intelligence and to be honest about the importance of mental health. I don't want to stigmatize mental health struggles, but I also don't want to unduly burden my child with the knowledge that mommy is struggling.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. Absolutely. As someone who has struggled with depression on and off for a lot of my life, I really understand that. I think what comes to my mind, and I'm not an expert in adult mental health at all, but what comes to my mind is we need to be honest with our children to say that we're having struggles, but we need to protect them from the depth of those struggles. So we need to protect them. So we share with them, you know, right now, mommy's not doing so great, but I'm going to get better and I'm going to get through this. So do not burden the child with your mental health issues, but be honest with them that you are experiencing some challenges. It has been hard. The second thing is to access good resources that help you with the mental health struggles. And right now in Ontario, there is a tele-CBT. You know, you can, if you're implying that you've got, significant enough mental health issues and struggles that you may need some support for it. So one is to reach out to Tele, CBT, which is a free service offered right now by the government. But if you're not into going into that kind of space, there is some wonderful resources out there. One is that's general for lots of parents and also for kids, is a book called Permission to Feel by Mark Brackett. A wonderful resource. For a more clinical resource, there's Mind Over Mood. Again, it's a cognitive behavior therapy that you can work on. It's a workbook that you can work on yourself. So the focus of knowing yourself, of not beating yourself up. Hello, yes, it's so easy for me to say that, and I know how hard it is not to do. But that's really important. And reach out to others. Do not hide this mental health struggles. Reach out to others, to your friends, to people who have gone through it, and you will be amazed at how many people say, you know what, I know exactly how you feel. So don't be going through this alone. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. So we're thinking two more questions,
Okay.
Doctor, if that's okay. Can you recommend any strategies or tips to support a child with anxiety back into in-person learning? The child has been remote learning since the start of the pandemic.
Right. So slow and steady wins the race. So if they have been very comfortable and have had some social anxiety issues, and so they want to stay home, then one of the things that I would recommend is that you think about slow and steady, that there isn't an all or nothing, that you are able to slowly integrate back into school with, a half day, 2 half days, 3 half days. So slow and steady wins the race. The second is there's a terrific resource that you have, Dr. Sherman there, and School Mental Health Ontario, so SMHO. There are sections for parents and some really good recommendations and suggestions on the SMHO website about how to help reintegrate kids back into school. There's also, so the next and the last resource I'll talk about is called anxietycanada.ca. And that has a whole section for kids and by kids and young people, that young people are talking about how I manage these things and how do you do things through COVID. So anxietycanada.ca would be also very helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So last question. We do have many that came in, but this will be the last one for the evening. We welcomed an 8-year-old into our home during this pandemic who came from a traumatic past. It has been tough to change how she views the world. How can I help her to be so that she feels like she is truly belonging and loved in our home?
Well, it is going to be, so if she's 8-year-old coming into your home during COVID or at this time, then what's hugely important is you have as your primary driver having her feel emotionally and psychologically safe. And it is going to take a long time for her to be able to feel that. So that means you need to be really thinking about being consistent in your approach to her, having predictability, having warm, attuned, responsive interactions with her all or most of the time. That you really dig deep into what her history has been and observe as much as you can. What are the things that her amygdala gets triggered with, her deep fight or flight center gets triggered with, and recognize all behavior has a reason. And it may be that she's stressed, and that's where the behavior comes from. Do not expect that she's going to respond to your loving kindness with saying, "Aren't you wonderful?" She's going to first respond with, "I'm not used to this. What does this mean? My brain says, this is danger. It's unpredictable. I don't know it." And so she may fight. She may fight against that. So I think all of those things are really important, and to link in with wherever the child was before, if it was through child welfare, to get the kind of supports that they offer to help you in this journey. And good for you for bringing in this child. Thank you. All right.
All right, I think we're going to switch over to Joy now.
Hi, Dr. Clinton. I don't think you can see me, but I'm here. My name is Joy Jansen, and I am a parent volunteer with the School Board Parent Involvement Committee. And so, as Dr. Sherman mentioned, we're the group that is hosting this speaker series with the help of some very talented and hardworking DSBN staff members. And I would like to give a very appreciative thank you to you this evening for making yourself available. There's high demand for child and youth mental health professionals, as witnessed by the hundreds of parents that are taking part in this session this evening. So once again, thank you for your career choice, and thank you for your helpful tips and tricks and all the perspectives you provided this evening. I appreciated the cues to say, take a screenshot, take a screenshot. I certainly did that so that I can add them to my own parenting arsenal of which I think got a little bit fuller this evening. If I may, I'm just going to take a quick moment to address all the parents out there. The slide that's up right now is just announcing our second presentation, which is actually going to be taking place in 2 weeks on Wednesday, December the 8th. I'm not sure if it's fully live yet on your school websites or on the DSBN website, but it will be within the day or two. And you can find a banner just like you registered for this session. We'll have another session coming up that's about preparing for a mentally healthy holiday season. So once again, Dr. Clinton, I really appreciated, we all appreciated this session this evening. And it's been very interesting how high the attendance has been always for any of the mental health sessions that we hosted last year. And I feel certain that it'll continue again. So very appreciative that you were here this evening. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.